Every creature on Earth relies on communication to act with or react to the world. An animal's communication determines its role, its mates, whether it lives or dies. Man is no exception. As sophisticated as human abilities are, millennia of adaptation has given some animals super senses for super communication. Unlocking their secrets may explain the workings of the Earth itself. Is smell as valuable a communication tool as sight and sound?
The more we look, the more we find that we should be paying more closer attention to this little critter up here in front of our faces.
Is communication as simple as peering into the brain?
Technology can play a huge role in helping us to communicate because our abilities, though tremendous as human beings, are nevertheless limited.
Can the lessons learned watching nature's intricate communications solve the ET question? What if aliens can hear us but have no notion of the message we're sending?
Could we send a message that would be understandable even though another civilization has evolved independently?
Wild Tech explores the secret world of communication. The biggest land mammal on Earth was harboring one of communication's biggest secrets. An elephant's trumpets and snorts are well known. This call alerts a parent of an injured calf, while this noisy family greeting strengthens bonds between family members. But these vocalizations are for close quarter contact. The secret they were hiding was a low-frequency vocabulary, which allowed them to communicate for miles.
Well, for many years we'd often noticed a female open her mouth as if she was rumbling, but we didn't hear any sound. And sometimes elephants all stop in a group with their ears raised as if they were listening, and yet we couldn't hear anything. And we began to wonder whether elephants weren't making sounds below the level of human hearing.
The elephants were talking to each other in a low-frequency realm known as infrasound. Humans can't hear below 20 hertz, but as the elephants have shown, this doesn't mean there is no sound occurring in this range. The long, low-frequency waves of infrasound travel far, and it's this discovery which has given man the ability to hear the moans and groans of the Earth itself, using a technology which opens up a whole new world of communication.
The atmosphere is really filled with these secret sounds, the sounds that we can't hear by ourselves. We can only hear them with our really sensitive instruments. And that's why it's so much fun to work in this field, because every day we come to work, we just don't know what sorts of sounds our network will have recorded.
Michael Hedlund also likes the wide open spaces. In this case, the Anza Borrego Desert in California.
We listen to the natural sounds of the atmosphere. We listen to severe storms. We listen to meteors exploding in the atmosphere. We listen to landslides. We listen to volcanoes. Some make noises almost continuously. Others make very dramatic sounds. So we just listen to the natural sounds of Earth's atmosphere.
The Earth is communicating, and if we interpret it correctly, may forewarn catastrophes. This super-sensitive listening device detects the ultra-low frequency rumbles of global events. Hedlund's is one of the first of a planned system of arrays spread around the globe, pinpointing natural events by the deep signals they emit.
When something very significant happens, it may be thousands of kilometers away, maybe on the other side of the globe, but it would register as a very large signal that all the instruments in the network would see. On the 24th of April, 2001, we got one of these surprises from the atmosphere. The night before, a meteor entered Earth's atmosphere and it exploded at a height of 30 kilometers above the Earth's surface. And the explosion was so significant that it was actually also recorded in Germany. We have 8 collections of pipes. At the end of each pipe is an inlet. The sound comes into the inlet and it travels along the pipe to this little chamber here. We call that a summing manifold. The sounds from all of these pipes enter the summing manifold, and this addition of all these sounds coming from all of these inlets is what reduces the noise and gives us this clearer view of the signals we're interested in.
There is more to this than the desire to be Infrasound's version of a ham radio operator, passively listening to the world. Elephants have exploited infrasound as an early warning system. When alarmed, their calls and footsteps can generate infrasound waves that alert other elephants up to 30 miles away. Similarly, scientists are confident the Earth's infrasounds may be the early communication of nature's wrath. At Cape Verde, off the coast of West Africa, notorious as a nursery for hurricanes, an array will be listening in for the signature of a brewing storm. Infrasound arrays are being established in Japan to listen for the sound of earth tremors, often a precursor to serious earthquakes. The infrasound technology could complement another technology monitoring the Earth, Quake Finder. A small satellite which measures tiny changes in the Earth's magnetic field. Launched in 2003, Quake Finder is testing anecdotal evidence that a region emits a weird glow and radio waves prior to a quake. If proved true, quake hunting could be a growth industry. Japanese scientists are looking to other phenomena. They believe some forms of life, such as rats and catfish, have a special ability to predict tremors. In 1995, a massive earthquake in Kobe, measuring 7.3 on the Richter scale, killed more than 5,000 people. In the days before the quake, scientists observed lab mice behaving erratically. These anecdotal reports of behavior backed similar observations at other earthquake scenes in Asia. While intriguing, this predictive capability of animals is yet to be accepted by the broader scientific community.
Many of us are quite skeptical because often there will be unusual activity by animals when no earthquake is occurring. There are some very good examples where there were reports of animals running out of the ground before an earthquake occurred. Perhaps that there was weak shaking that was weakening their burrows underground. I really doubt that they're really detecting the seismic motions themselves, just the collapse of their burrows caused by the seismic movements.
It's not just natural phenomena which communicate infrasound. Underground and high-altitude nuclear explosions have their own acoustic signature, which can be read by Headland's microbarometers. Any rogue states with the capacity to conduct nuclear or missile tests will be heard. Another early warning system vital to the health of the planet. Communicating beyond human abilities. Opening doors on man's understanding of the Earth. Other scientific disciplines are learning communication comes in all shapes and sizes, and odors. 21st century mass communication is dictated by our ability to receive and process information. Our antennae keep us in contact with the world. But in nature, antennae are a communication device as intricate as the most delicate scientific instrument, allowing a secret communication that is their life force. Ant colonies require no communication infrastructure, no wires, no radio waves, no hardware. Yet every individual ant in a colony of tens of thousands of individuals knows exactly what it has to do, be it gather food, tend the queen, tend the young. Every chore is done without supervision or direction. Unlike the communication techniques of humans, the ants communicate mainly with smell. The hardware they use is their antennae. These are extraordinarily fine-tuned to differentiate hydrocarbons found on the bodies of other ants. The hydrocarbons change depending on circumstances, and smelling this change forms the basis of ant communication. If a nest is breached, ants working inside are exposed to sunlight. Their hydrocarbons change. This signals to other ants the nest requires repair. Similarly, chemical odors on nurse ants tell the scouts when food is low and it's time to forage. The scouts in turn tell the collectors, chemically, it's time to gather and where to gather from. Smell and scent are also a powerful form of human communication.
Scent is used as a tool in communication in many different species of animals, including humans. The more we learn about what's going on in humans, the more we're amazed at how much information we're actually providing.
Like ants, our bodies release certain chemicals under different conditions. And it's these smells which are the foundation of new theories of human communication. Charles Wysocki is pheromone researcher at the Monochemical Senses Center in Philadelphia.
For example, we know that when people see scary movies, their odor changes, especially relative to when those same people see happy movies or comedies. And other people can take the smell of that odor and make a discrimination between the two. Recently, we found that the smells from a male can affect the hormone systems that underlie the women's or a woman's menstrual cycle. And in fact, those very same chemicals from the underarm of a male can make the woman less tense and more relaxed. The sense of smell has been overlooked, one might say forgotten, but I think it's been relegated to the background. As humans, we're such visual creatures, but I think the more we look as a visual creature at how the sense of smell is contributing to changes in our behavior and our physiology, the more we find that we should be paying more closer attention to this little critter up here in front of our faces.
Apart from covert interpersonal messages, smells are being used overtly to manipulate our lives, particularly at the cash register.
I'm sure people have been around situations where odors have been wafting out the front door of a building. That's intentional. It's to bring our attention to the smells in the store, presumably to attract us to certain areas and maybe even to spend more money.
Several large Japanese corporations also spritz a range of scents throughout their buildings in an attempt to manage workers' moods.
Some companies have been using smells to increase worker productivity, increase efficiency, decrease the number of errors that people make on the job.
One company even offers a workplace scent menu. Citrus in the morning to wake workers up. light floral scent to aid concentration in mid-morning, an odor-free lunch, and wood, lemon, and floral scents in the afternoon. But mankind lags well behind ants when it comes to efficiency of scent communication. An ant's entire life is dictated by the smells around it. Smells act like a switch on its brain. An ant has no choice but to obey. This ability of direct action using refined chemical messages creates an efficiency of communication, a parallel which is not lost on NASA.
11.413 C and FE.
Astronauts must live for days, weeks, or months in a totally enclosed environment. They have no choice but to breathe the same air over and over while a machine cleans the air and keeps the balance of gases just right.
They have a lot of things to work on. They're very busy. They can't be monitoring every aspect of their environment. Smell is something that's very important, but it can't always be relied on to identify everything that's there. In some cases, dangerous chemicals don't have an odor, or we can't detect them at levels low enough that they should be concerned. Or sometimes the nose will get fatigued. And so once you become exposed to a smell, after a while you don't smell it anymore.
To survive a chemical accident in space, astronauts need a highly refined, automatic, and immediate response system, just like an ant's. From detection of a scent, ants have one step between action and response, whereas an astronaut has at least 4 steps, all reliant on making correct assumptions. Lack of detection, a delay in action, or an incorrect response could create a critical situation. Technology's answer: an electronic nose called the E-nose.
It has a pump, which is like your lungs, which brings the air into the sensor and then brings the air across the sensors. Sensors, which are like the sensors in your nose, we make them ourselves. We have a set here of 8 sensors, so each little black spot is one sensor. The sensors are made from different polymers that have been impregnated with carbon. They respond differently to different odors when they're exposed. Inside our electronic nose, we have 4 sets of these, so we have a total of 32 sensors inside our E-nose. I've put my hand in front of the E-nose, and I've got a response now from having a clean hand, and some sensors have responded to that. And now I'm going to put some hand lotion on and then hold my hand in front of the E-nose again, and you'll see that it can tell the difference between a clean hand and a hand with candy apple lotion on it. Okay, if you look at the screen, the patterns look very similar. That's to be expected. In both cases, my hand is being smelled. But in the second case, you can see this green peak has become much stronger, and that's because of the hand lotion. With an electronic nose, you expose it to different types of smells you want it to identify, and then that data gets stored into the computer. And as it gets enough data, the computer learns to identify those patterns, and so we use the computer as the brain for the electronic nose.
It's the E-nose memory which will save astronauts. Any smell detected will immediately invoke a programmed safety response. The space station will work independently of human decision-making.
Maybe there's a more disastrous spill. Some large chemical bottle has been dropped and spilled, and the system could say, you know, the air is very dangerous, put on breathing apparatus while you're cleaning it up, and then as they're cleaning it up, and the levels drop, the system would then say, okay, the air is clean enough now that you could return to breathing without the breathing apparatus.
E-nose technology also has applications for aircraft and submarines. But what if we didn't need our senses to communicate? and could tap into the brain itself. A new technology is able to detect the hidden secrets locked in the deep recesses of our brain. Man and chimpanzees share some 95% of genetic material. But when it comes to communication, man's ability to use language and technology gives us an edge. But chimps and some other animals share at least one of man's most sophisticated communication tools, the ability to lie.
They will pretend like they're disinterested in something until another one makes a move for it, whereupon then there'll be a big scrap about it. Birds will feign injury in order to draw people away from their nest. The plover, for example, will give the broken wings dance, luring intruders away from the nest. All of these are remarkable things that give us pause to consider what it is that really goes through the minds of beings other than ourselves.
Animal communication shows they are able to exhibit cunning and guile to achieve a result, be it more food, possessions, or a sexual partner. In many ways, not that far removed from humans. The difference is, humans are skilled at deception. Billions are spent each year in the judicial system searching for truth, not always successfully. Now, a new technology threatens to expose every liar on the planet.
Okay, Charisse, this headband will pick up the electrical signals from the brain. As you can see, there are electrodes embedded in the headband. These will pick up your brain signals from 3 different parts of your brain, and also...
Dr. Lawrence Farwell is a neuroscientist from Iowa. His invention is a machine that's capable of scientifically determining deception. A suspect's ability to deceive is short-circuited because normal interrogation methods are bypassed. The brain communicates its innermost secrets directly to the computer, no matter how poker-faced you may be. The technology is called brain fingerprinting.
Brain fingerprinting doesn't detect lies or truth. It doesn't detect guilt or innocence. What brain fingerprinting detects is information stored in the brain. The question we ask is, does this subject have the details about, say, a crime stored in his brain or not? And that's the question that we can answer scientifically with brain fingerprinting.
Conventional lie detection works by attempting to detect a stress response, such as sweat on the palms, changes in blood pressure, heart activity, even changes in breathing during interrogation.
Prior to 1995, did you ever steal anything from someone who trusted you?
No.
But if you're a good liar, you can easily lie your way through a detector test.
Yes.
If someone wants to fake a response, they can do so by physically causing themselves some discomfort by putting their toe on a tack or biting their tongue or something like that. Or they can do it emotionally by thinking of something terrible to create an emotional response. And if you understand how a test works and you know when to fake that response in the control questions, then it makes your response to the relevant questions about the crime seem smaller by comparison. And people have been known to do that in order to beat a test.
Because of this fallibility and the test's interpretive nature, polygraphs are inadmissible as evidence in court in the United States. Brain fingerprinting is infallible because it directly reads brain activity. When shown specific details about a crime, if the accused is innocent, the brain will have no knowledge of the event and show no activity. If the accused is guilty, the brain will respond, even if the accused denies the crime.
We're running a test of Charisse's brainwaves, and this screen illustrates the brainwave responses as they're taking place.
Dr. Farwell is measuring responses from a subject accused of a crime. In this simulation, it's his assistant. Her only interaction is with the computer. She records a simple yes or no with the click of a mouse if she recognizes a keyword or phrase displayed on the screen.
Among those stimuli that she's pushing the don't recognize button, some of them are relevant to the crime. So if the actual perpetrator was pushing that don't recognize button, his thumb would be saying, no, I don't recognize it, but his brain would say, aha, yes, that's the murder weapon, or that's where the body was found, or other information about the crime. So we would pick up from his brain something different from what he was overtly telling us with his button presses, or what he would be overtly telling us if we interviewed him about the subject.
In other words, your brain either has the knowledge or it doesn't. The result is unequivocal.
We have a mathematical algorithm that analyzes the brainwaves and comes up with a determination of information present or information absent. Either the information stored in the brain matches that crime scene or it doesn't. I consent to participate in Farwell brain fingerprinting as a free and voluntary act. This agreement
Brain fingerprinting has been a rare but powerful tool in the quest for justice.
Understand that?
In August 1999, Dr. Farwell was invited by local authorities to brain fingerprint James B. Grinder. He had been a prime suspect in the murder of a woman in Mason, Missouri 15 years earlier. This elevated blue line indicates Grinder's response to the specific details of the murder.
For example, some of the wounds on the body would be known only to the perpetrator, where the body was specifically. Some of the items that were found at the scene of the crime, other items that were thrown out of a car near the scene of the crime. Those would be known to the perpetrators and to investigators, but not to someone who wasn't there. Well, J.B. Grinder knew those details. Some of these are the names of people involved in the crime, victim and perpetrators. You ready to go again?
Yeah.
Okay, here it goes.
Following Dr. Farwell's results, Grinder faced almost certain conviction and a probable death sentence.
1 week after the brain fingerprinting test, Grinder pled guilty in exchange for life in prison, and also then confessed to 3 other murders of young women. So this is one case where brain fingerprinting caught a serial killer and put him in prison where he belongs.
It's not just criminals who'll face the brain fingerprinting test.
We can detect an Al-Qaeda-trained terrorist who's been through Al-Qaeda training. We can tell the difference between a terrorist and an innocent Afghani student. So not only can we detect whether someone's committed a specific crime, but we can also detect whether somebody's had a specific kind of training, whether they've been involved in the planning of a terrorist act or training for terrorist acts.
As a high-tech method of detecting major crime and terrorist deception, the brain fingerprint is foolproof, but impractical for use on day-to-day interpersonal communication. For this, humans rely on nonverbal observation.
I think the most important thing to understand about human communication is that most of our existence has been done in the cave era, where body signals and body movement was the only form of communication. Now, in recent times, we've developed this interesting exaggerated breathing thing called speaking, and our emphasis in our education system has been devoted to that, and ignoring the main communication system, which is our body signals.
Alan Pease, author of Body Language, has made a career studying interpersonal relationships. Reading nonverbal communication is as complex and intricate as studying a language.
In the animal world, the lead animal makes the first gestures and the subordinates copy in pecking order. And humans are the same. If we really feel comfortable with someone or we think they're superior, if they take the first action, we will copy, usually in a pecking order. And this man's going for his drink. And in synchrony, the 2 women either side are picking up their drink together, mirroring his behaviour. That gives us the clue that he's likely to have the most amount of power in that relationship. What you see here is a smile. Human smiling is used the same way chimpanzees and monkeys use it, to show that we're non-threatening. It's what's called a fear face. And also, this woman is showing the side of her neck, which shows that she's not threatening to anybody in the group, so they'll feel comfortable having her around. Well, researchers everywhere generally agree that the percentage of non-verbal communication in face-to-face encounters like we are right now accounts for somewhere between 60 to 80% of the impact. What you actually say, that is the words, only account for 7 to 10% of the impact. So what you actually say doesn't matter that much. It's more important how you look and behave than what you said. When the brain's decided it's had enough, it doesn't want to see these people anymore, it doesn't want to deal with the circumstances, it does what's called shut-off. That is, we do slow blinking like this. By removing the person, we don't have to deal with them anymore.
Now, what's the whole story?
Well, so far there's been about 1 million recorded gestures that show some link to emotion, and that's what non-verbal signals do. They show your emotional condition. So your ability to be a good reader is your ability to look at the person's emotional condition through their body movements and gestures and match it up with what you hear them saying in the circumstances under which it's happening. And that allows you to work out what's fact and what's fiction. And women's brains are far more predisposed than men's for doing this, for the survival of babies, so they can look at offspring and determine is it hungry, frightened, injured and pain and so on.
It's the complexities of man's verbal and non-verbal communication techniques, which is the stimulus for technology's next challenge. Providing artificial intelligence to robots.
Bienvenue. Come on in.
Imagine if robots could independently learn, could emote, could communicate. '20th century robotics conquered manual labor. The next challenge, the thinking robot.
They're not autonomous. They're not sensing much in the world, which is very different from an autonomous robot truly interacting in an emotional way with people.
Rodney Brooks is director of the MIT Artificial Intelligence Lab. He believes if robots are to ever gain the complexities of human language, technology should look to animal communication first.
Because we have co-evolved with animals and come from animals, we can communicate with animals at certain levels. We understand them, they understand us, and we have this non-verbal communication. And I suspect with our robots, it's going to be hard for us to invent anything particularly new. The forms of communication we'll have will be based on language and the same sorts of communications we have with animals.
In some instances, communication with animals is sophisticated and advanced, as researchers working with apes at Georgia State University have discovered.
Is this your big one? Is this your big rock chip?
What we have found really in our research, along with other researchers of the past 35 years, is that apes are capable of learning symbols and to use them to stand for things that are not necessarily present in time and space.
There's a food. There's a food. There's a food.
In a remarkable experiment, Dwayne Rumbaugh and Sue Savage Rumbaugh have taught chimpanzees of the subspecies bonobo to communicate using basic human language.
And they could look at a symbol and say, this is a tool. This is hammer, and it's a tool. Look at another. This is bean cake. That's not a tool, that's a food.
Okay. Kanzi, give me the picture of the bananas. The bananas. That's right.
Unlike circus animals or pets, Kanzi doesn't perform for a reward. He can't physically speak, but he has the language ability of a 2-year-old child.
Chow. There's the picture of the chow.
They have built a communication structure by learning the connections between symbols on a board and the objects and emotions the symbols represent. And most importantly, the apes can communicate to their handlers what they want and how they feel.
Grapes, You've been good, that's right. You've been real good. Yeah, you've been real good.
Kanzi learned what he did by observation and not by what we would call reinforced training. The most complex things that infant humans and infant apes learn is really through observation. That the brain is, if you will, hungry for reliable relationships to be announced between things.
Where's your tummy? There's your tummy. That's very nice.
Learning by observation is the key to human communication. And it's similar building blocks which robotic engineers are also using to create the intelligent robots of the future.
Right now, Kismet is modeling a very young infant who doesn't really have language. So it babbles and does turn-taking, as you can do with a young infant, back and forth. And as with a young infant, it may be willing to pay attention to us at some points, or it may be interested in other things. Come here.
This is Kismet. Unlike other robots, it can't walk, so could be mistaken as less advanced. But Kismet has skills which will make it the benchmark for all future robots. It can interact independently with people.
Are we having a conversation?
And it can learn by observation.
Yeah, look at this. Look at this. Say green.
Green.
Green, yeah, it's green. With Kismet, we really concentrated on early social interaction, such as a pre-linguistic child would have. From age 0, mothers across the world in every language use the same intonations in their voice to express some basic messages to their child. Approval, prohibition, soothing, praise. We put the same sort of understanding into Kismet. Do you remember this? Say green.
Green.
Green, that's right. Yeah, you got it.
Kismet is looking and responding. These are not pre-programmed reactions. It also has modified human emotions. Kismet's social drive stimulates its need to communicate with people, while a fatigue drive creates a need for sleep. Each drive has a normal position, which Kismet equates with the human emotions comfort and happiness.
Kismet, that's very good.
Kismet also imparts nonverbal communication signals, just like humans. For that, the team again drew on the animal world.
When we communicate with other people, we no longer use ear gestures. But when we communicate with our dogs, we understand their ears going up, we understand them moving around, we get a lot of feedback. So on Kismet, we put ears there, the little pink ears, because we knew that that was a very easy cue for people to read, because we see them reading it in dogs and horses and lots of other animals. So I think gradually over time, we're going to see robots in our lives that start to play with the same social cues that we're completely used to with each other and with animals.
It's an irony that to make robots more human-like and exhibit artificial intelligence, researchers draw on animal communication.
Are we having a conversation or not? We've been able to build robots that can interact on a moment-to-moment basis in a social sort of way. But so far, none of our robots develop a long-term relationship with individuals, such as our cats and our dogs do. Our robots to date have not had a long-term, ongoing internal life. We're trying to move towards that in our research, but we're not quite there yet.
Ongoing internal life of artificially intelligent robots will create independent, useful machines. It will also open up the next opportunity in the communication challenge. Contact with extraterrestrials. The vastness of space is one of the chief impediments in the search for alien intelligence. Distance and time prohibit astronauts traveling the cosmos searching for ET. But robots could perform this task easily.
Now, it's most likely that the first physical encounter we're ever going to have with some other species intelligent species is going to be in terms of their probes coming to look at our solar system, which will be robotic in some way. If those robots are built in the image of their creators, who knows what they might be like and whether we could really understand them. They may have very different social cues. Just like we can't really quite understand whether a dolphin is intelligent because it's not close enough to us. We may not be able to figure out whether it's an intelligent robot that's coming to see us or it's just a dumb ATM machine that's sending back images, because we won't know the way to interact with it.
If they're out there, can we bridge the communication gap?
Extraterrestrials aren't going to understand English or Swahili or Chinese. The question then is, how do we say something that they could understand?
Very few animals can communicate between species. Captive bonobos can understand simple human language. But contact with aliens will require a level of sophistication of communication well beyond these first steps. However, interspecies communication is not unheard of.
The interesting thing about caterpillar ant associations is they're quite literally everywhere in the world. The butterfly caterpillars associate with ants to gain protection against predators, mainly insect predators.
Dr. Phil DeVries of the University of Oregon has found that a unique protective relationship exists between caterpillars and rattler ants. The ants feed on a sugary secretion produced by the caterpillars. In turn, the caterpillars require the ants' protection, and to get this, they communicate with them.
This caterpillar, if we pick it up and we put it on this membrane that I have here with a special microphone, what you'll find is that although we can't hear anything now, with this special microphone, you can hear the caterpillar singing. There's a dawn chorus of caterpillar calls every morning, and no one hears them.
If a caterpillar senses danger, it makes the identical sound the ant would make to signal danger. The ants are programmed to respond when they hear this signal, and they rush to protect the caterpillar. The caterpillar has learned to speak the secret communication of these ants. Should they exist, contact with extraterrestrials will require all forms of communication, from the obvious to the not so obvious.
We've been sending out unintentional messages to extraterrestrials as long as radio broadcasts have been going on, so over 60 years. Now, that's very different from the sort of messages that we would want to send if we really want to make contact. First of all, those signals are relatively weak. We could send much more powerful signals if we intentionally beam them out in a very focused manner. But the fact is, we have already announced our presence to the galaxy, and at the speed of light, our existence is being sent out into space.
Doug Vakosh is a psychologist and a celestial observer, leading a team of communication specialists at the privately funded Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, or SETI Institute. His passion is deciding, if communication happens, what language will we use? The traditional approach of SETI has been to assume the initial contact would be with advanced intelligences. So the contact subject matter should be based on math or science. Now, the debate is whether contact should be based on delivering a more esoteric subject, what it's like to be human.
How can we explain what it's like to be human? I mean, how can we say something about our sense of beauty or the fact that we take care of one another? Well, that's the new direction that we're heading in the SETI Institute, looking at how we can communicate something about our sense of aesthetics in interstellar messages. And ironically, we can do it by tapping into some of those same basic principles of math. A great example of a way to start an interstellar communication is with the Fibonacci series.
The Fibonacci series is a numerical pattern that describes many objects in the universe, as big as galaxies or as small as a nautilus shell. It's based on a simple mathematical principle whereby a number is created by adding the previous two numbers. These numbers translate into perfect geometrical patterns.
By sending the Fibonacci series, we have an opportunity to explain to another civilization something about what we see as aesthetically pleasing, and doing it in a way that may be intelligible to them.
If this is the message we send, the next question is, what is the medium? And the answer to that may lie in music. Vakosh has put the series into a musical form. The theory is, if the series is repeated as a pattern, an alien life will recognize it isn't random and must have been made by an intelligent life form.
It's somewhat like sending an interstellar music, a little bit like in the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Only the challenge here is to communicate when you don't have face-to-face contact, when you have to do it across interstellar distances. You know, when we think about communicating with extraterrestrials, often we think of communicating with beings kind of like us, but what happens if they're supercomputers? Would they understand our sense of beauty? I suspect they might even understand something like that, given the mathematical basis of at least some of what we see as aesthetically pleasing. Are we alone in the universe? No one knows. I personally think there's a good enough chance that I'm willing to spend my career looking for life, preparing for life, thinking about what we might say in an exchange with them. But do we know? No way.
The point is, we don't know when contact will happen, nor if contact will happen. But at least we'll be prepared for it. If contact should ever come to pass, then let's be sure we're clear in our message. We come in peace. Listening to the earth. Learning from animals. Speaking with aliens. The lessons learned from nature are that communication comes in many shapes and forms. Using technology to communicate outside the normal realms of our senses has opened new dimensions and may ultimately open the universe.